We had a moving visit today to the wall. I can't resist repeating this, but I'm going to. I said to the secretary that the last time Pompeo visited Jerusalem didn't end that well. But this is a different time. Rome and Jerusalem clashed over values with a great tragedy for the Jewish people. But the new Rome, the United States, views itself as a new Jerusalem.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are tackling a stack of sources that, well, they don't just bridge theology and geopolitics, they basically fuse them together.
It's pretty intense stuff.
It really is. Our mission here is to understand a radical, even explosive thesis that ancient prophecies in the book of Revelation might actually be a hidden map of current world events.
And this map, according to the sources, directly implicates a key strategic ally in what could be a massive future betrayal.
So to do this, you really have to put aside decades of common assumptions. For so many people, the infamous apocalyptic city Babylon the Great has always meant Rome, right?
Or maybe a rebuilt city in Iraq. That's the other popular theory.
Right. But the sources we have argue for something far more challenging.
Yeah.
They ask, what if Babylon the Great is actually a code name?
A code name for apostate Jerusalem.
And that, right there, immediately grabs your attention. It just completely reroutes the traditional prophetic narrative.
It does. The sources approach this using a framework they call a futurist literal interpretation of Revelation, chapters 17 and 18.
Okay, before we dive into the evidence, can you just quickly ground us in what futurist literal even means?
Sure. When we say futurist literal, we mean the sources are treating Revelation not as poetry or, an allegory that was fulfilled centuries ago.
So not just symbolism.
Not just symbolism. They see it as a detailed, coded blueprint for events that will literally happen in the future, specifically around the time of the Antichrist's rise to power.
A blueprint. Got it. And the sources are absolutely insistent that this blueprint points directly at Jerusalem. How do they even begin to justify that claim? I mean, the text itself calls it Babylon.
They build the case pretty meticulously, actually, by cross-referencing within Revelation itself. The key argument is all about identity.
Okay.
Throughout Revelation 17 and 18, the harlot city is repeatedly called the Great City. Now, that exact phrase appears elsewhere.
And the sources connect the dots.
They point specifically to Revelation 11, verse 8, which describes a place called the Great City, where also their Lord was crucified.
And there's only one place on earth where their Lord was crucified. That makes the geographical link, well, it's extremely difficult to dismiss if you accept the author is using that phrase as a specific reference.
Exactly. And the sources also point out that this great city is separated in the text from the cities of the nations, which implies it's not just another Gentile capital, it's something unique.
Like a spiritual capital.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
And beyond the geography, you have the powerful symbolism of the harlot herself.
Right, the metaphor.
Yes. If you look at the Old Testament, the primary metaphor for spiritual unfaithfulness, for idolatry, is a harlot. And the research we analyzed suggests that this label was applied to Israel and Jerusalem specifically.
Overwhelmingly.
Overwhelmingly, far more than to any Gentile nation. You see these devastating oracles in Isaiah and especially Ezekiel where God accuses Jerusalem of spiritual prostitution. It was her historical label for breaking the covenant.
So the biblical language itself really leans towards Jerusalem being the target of that specific condemnation. But still, what about the name Babylon? Why the substitution?
That's where the idea of the mystery comes in. Revelation 17 says the name Babylon the Great is a mystery.
The code word.
The sources interpret it as a coded name, absolutely. It's just like how Jerusalem is mystically called Sodom and Egypt earlier in Revelation. It seems to be a pattern.
So the author assigns the city a name associated with profound wickedness, Babylon, Sodom, Egypt, to describe its spiritual state without explicitly naming it.
Exactly. And the final piece of evidence, which is maybe the strongest, is the city's alleged crime.
Shedding the blood of prophets, saints, and apostles.
Which is foundational to the whole argument. I mean, think about it. Ancient Babylon, while cruel, wasn't famous for executing Jewish prophets or Christian apostles on a mass scale.
Jerusalem was.
The sources cite Matthew 23, where Jesus himself condemns Jerusalem for that very thing, killing the prophets across generations. That charge fits the history of apostate Jerusalem perfectly.
Okay, so the theological groundwork is set. Apostate Jerusalem is the harlot city. Now let's transition to the strategy, this idea that the city rides the beast. What does that alliance even look like?
This is the core dynamic. The harlot is described as the city which reigns over the kings of the earth, but it's a temporary elevation.
Her power isn't her own.
No, the sources really emphasize that. Her power isn't from her own military might. It's because the beast, the Antichrist, and his global system chooses to place his capital there. She's riding on his power.
So she uses the global system for visibility, for authority, for protection.
Precisely. And this lines up with the idea that the Antichrist initially presents himself as a political savior, maybe even the Messiah, to the Jewish people.
The book of Daniel talks about this, right? The covenant he makes.
Exactly. It prophesies he'll enforce or reinvigorate a covenant, possibly the Mosaic Law, for 7 years. Jerusalem accepts him because he seems to be delivering on ancient promises, making her the center of the world again.
But it's all a manipulation. A counterfeit New Jerusalem, designed to elevate her before the ultimate betrayal.
Absolutely. After 3.5 years, the sources predict the Antichrist breaks that covenant. He stops the temple worship he started and commits the abomination of desolation.
He enters the rebuilt temple and declares himself to be a god.
And that's the turning point. The temporary ally is exposed, and the faithful remnant has to flee.
This prophetic setup takes us right into the modern geopolitical analysis, which is where the alleged, well, malicious intent comes into play.
It's a huge leap, but the sources draw a direct line. They connect this temporary, manipulative alliance to how certain strategic circles in Israel allegedly view the United States.
And they connect it to comments from former Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Yes, his public statements framing the United States as the new Rome. The sources claim this isn't just historical poetry.
No, they say it reveals a deep-string Jewish eschatological grievance. The idea that the defeat by ancient Rome is still seen as the last great battle that needs to be reversed.
Right, so when Netanyahu says, we lost that one, we have to win the next one, the implication, according to these sources, is that the current superpower, America, is not an eternal friend.
But the successor to Rome, a powerful temporary tool.
Or the beast that must be ridden, used, and ultimately discarded when it's no longer useful.
That is the interpretation. That the harlot is designed to ride the beast system, manipulating American might and visibility to secure its own position.
And to deflect global contempt away from his own actions. The alliance is strategic, not spiritual.
And the sources argue this hidden contempt is now meeting a perfect storm of changing public opinion in America. They say the two traditional pillars of U.S. support for Israel are cracking.
They are. The first is that post-Holocaust moral sympathy, which is just naturally fading with generational distance. The second, and maybe the more volatile pillar, is the theological support of dispensational Christian Zionism.
Let's just clarify that for you. Dispensational Christian Zionism is a specific belief, mainly in American evangelicalism, that the modern state of Israel is a direct fulfillment of prophecy.
And, crucially, they believe supporting Israel is a requirement for hastening Christ's return and ensuring God's blessing on America. It has generated massive political and financial support.
So if that theological foundation dissolves,
The political pressure just evaporates.
and the sources say this is dissolving now because of a massive influx of unfiltered information, especially among younger Americans.
Exactly. They aren't bound by those older narratives. The sources cite a whole list of things that are now mainstream conversation.
Things like the unfiltered Gaza footage on social media, the old allegations about the USS Liberty attack,
Espionage cases like Jonathan Pollard, the Lavon affair, the huge influence of lobbying groups like AIPAC. It's all out in the open now.
and this list, the sources argue, has created a generational rupture. For a new generation, the perception is shifting from Israel as David.
To Israel as the aggressive Goliath, one that has, in the sources' words, repeatedly bitten the hand that fed it.
This geopolitical and emotional divorce perfectly sets the stage for the prophecy in Revelation 17. The powerful ally, the beast, starts to feel antagonism toward the rider.
The stage is set for the turn.
So let's talk about that final betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
The sources point to Revelation 17, verse 16, as the turning point, where the global system realizes the harlot is no longer useful.
And when that strategic utility ends, the prophecy is brutal. It says the beast and his 10 kings will turn in hatred upon the prostitute.
They will strip her, make her desolate, and burn her with fire. The temporary ally becomes the object of ultimate global destruction.
And the sources highlight the devastating irony in that judgment. The language used, stripped, eaten, burned, it's not random, is it?
No, it's a direct callback.
It's strikingly similar to the ancient oracles from Ezekiel against Jerusalem. God promised that her former lovers, the nations she relied on would be the ones to strip her and leave her desolate because of her spiritual harlotry.
So, if the sources are right, the global system, led by the Antichrist, ends up being the agent of divine judgment, repaying Jerusalem double for her unfaithfulness and her manipulation.
It is the ultimate consequence of trying to ride the beast instead of relying on covenant. But the sources don't end on total destruction.
Right. They stress that while the apostate, earthly Jerusalem may face that ruin, God's plan ultimately involves saving a remnant.
And the city is eventually rebuilt in righteousness, becoming the New Jerusalem. But that renewal can only happen after the manipulative apostate version is purged from the earth.
Okay, so to recap, the sources present this stunning shift. Babylon the Great is apostate Jerusalem, securing global power by temporarily riding the Antichrist system. We see a potential mirror of this in the modern New Rome framing.
Which suggests a strategic contempt for the temporary ally has been there all along. And the geopolitical foundation for that alliance is now cracking, setting the stage for the predicted betrayal.
And that leaves a pretty provocative thought for you to consider, based on this analysis.
If that strategic contempt for the U.S. really is an echo of the ancient grievance against Rome, then the next battle Netanyahu wants to win against Rome might just be the very battle in which the beast, having been used to secure the city's rise, finally turns and devours the harlot who thought she could ride them forever.
What happens when that political and military divorce between the global system and the exalted city becomes complete?
We want to know what you're reading now.
What I'm reading?
Yeah.
It's a book by a historian named Barry Strauss. It's called The Jews Against Rome. Jews Against Rome.
What made you pick it up?
Well, we lost that one. I think we have to win the next one.